Do something else.
Thanks,
Okay, Madam
Alexia.
Chair.
Okay, all right. Okay, welcome to the Village of Mamaroneck Planning Board. It's October 14th, 2020, and I'm calling the meeting to order. We, as you may notice, if you're watching at home, we have 3 planning board members with us tonight. Lou got detained, may join us later. John Verney will be absent. If Lou doesn't come, he should be marked absent as well. We're going to take items on the agenda a little bit out of order. 4A, 355 Phillips Park Road, the applicant's representative had to cover another meeting tonight and she will be a little late. So we're going to move them down the agenda. William, when they show up in the waiting room, just let us know. We can move them up. But those of you who are here for Phillips Park Road, we're going to move them down. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is a discussion item for 352 Shore Acres Drive. They came before us, I guess it was last month. And for the first, yes, it was the beginning of the first meeting in September. And they asked for a reduction in the escrow that was requested by the Village of Mamaroneck to pay for the consultants and reviews of the applications and things like that. So do we have the applicant's representatives with us now? I think I saw, if I'm putting my Kristins and Christies in the right places, I think we have someone here for them, so. Okay, are you here for 652?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Tony Joffrey for the record. I'm cutting it later.
Okay. So could you just remind us how much you were asked to put into escrow, or the applicant was asked to put into escrow, and then the staff did some review of this and they can give their recommendation to the planning board.
Yes, thank you. So we submitted this application, which required site plan, wetlands, and consistency review. The site plan escrow was $9,500. The wetlands escrow was $3,500, and the consistency review escrow was $1,500. We were classified as a major site plan, and the same review that'll be done for the site plan and the wetlands will be done by this board. We're moving through the HCZMC, and this code does not define what a major site plan consists of, but I certainly think this proposal does not constitute what the village would classify as a major site plan.
Could you just repeat those numbers? Could you repeat the numbers and give us a total?
Sure. It's.
I mean, I can total them up, but I don't have the numbers.
Sure. The site plan escrow is $9,500. The wetlands escrow is $3,500. So that puts us at 13,000, and the consistency escrow was 1,500. So it's 14,500.
Okay, I thought it was around 14,000, but we didn't have any record of it from the last meeting. Okay, so I do believe that William, Amber, and let me introduce Amber to everybody. This is the first time we're seeing her. Amber joined us less than 10 days ago. Right around 10 days ago, assistant planner and land use coordinator.
It's assistant planner. Thank you.
Planner?
Nice to meet everyone. Yes.
Assistant planner. And she jumped right in as did William. So this is our new planning staff. So welcome aboard. Okay, so you all worked with Frank is here. And we have also Dennis Drogan from the building department here as well. So whoever wants to start letting us know, we have your letter of recommendation. But if you want to walk us through how you got there and whether or not what you're recommending is total or just one component of these 3 numbers, okay?
So the planning staff and the building staff, we looked at this together and we researched other towns and we came to, I think, which is the right amount, total escrow of $8,500.
So
And
that
that's
would be a reduction from 14 down,
14.5.
14.5 down to 85.
85, right.
Okay, so you looked at other communities.
Yes. Mount Kisco, I think Ossining, a few other communities.
I guess I think what we were looking for was what's happened here more recently. This is the first time I've actually worked on an escrow reduction request. So I think because we might be setting some precedent in the village, I'm a little more concerned about what do we normally do here, because it's a $2,000 difference between a major site plan review and a minor site plan review, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's what the statute says. And I don't know, it's not defined as we understand it. So it's always been up to the building department and I guess the planning staff to come up with a recommendation. I mean, I did look a little bit more at the application, and while it's nothing unusual, it's a single family house, but there's a lot of work, and the building permit states that it's $800,000 worth of work. So I don't know if value goes into evaluating whether it's a major or minor site plan, but I'm really concerned about, starting precedent on adjusting these without some kind of formula or rationale. So I guess everybody's new, and that makes it tough for institutional memory, and maybe we don't have access to this information, but I'm less concerned about other municipalities. I'm more concerned about what we've done in the past.
Well, and what we ask for escrow, because the way I understand it is the applicant puts money into escrow, and that's drawn down to pay for consulting work like Brian and Susan, and then obviously other consultants for other land use boards. But as it gets to a certain point, they're asked to replenish it. So money gets put in so work can continue, because we've had people who haven't paid their escrow and are not allowed to come back to the board until they do. So what I never understood was, what's the average application cost? I mean, we have to know sort of at the end of the day how much people are spending to come to before our boards. What's the average, wetlands permit and a site plan, which are basically done at the same time. So to have two different numbers, I'm not really sure why, unless we have different consultants, but we don't normally do we? No.
Previously, there were applications for a wetland permit that didn't require a site plan. I think the policy of the board has changed. And anytime that the escrow gets reduced to 50%, it needs to be replenished. And
Right.
The code does permit an applicant to request a reduction of the planning board at the first appearance, which we did 2 meetings ago.
Right. I think we're all there. We're just trying to figure out, I don't have a problem with any of the concepts here. So I don't know. So the staff looked at other municipalities, not actual numbers that happen in the village of Mamaroneck with the consultants who we have at our disposal, and how much they're billing and how much they cost. Right? Is that a fair
Correct.
statement?
I think every application is different, and we should revisit the chart that I based my original 14.5 on. That should be looked at a little closer.
Okay, but that's not for this board. That's for
No.
the clerk treasurer's office and the village manager and the board of trustees. Okay,
Madam Chair, I misspoke on one of the wetlands permit escrow was $3,000, not $3,500. So it was a $14,000 submission that we did make.
Right.
So my memory is better than I thought it was.
I mean, do we have an idea? I mean, I think the applicant is moving through the system fairly quickly. I think you got a very good review from us, and I'm going to assume there's not going to be a big holdup at HCZMC. So does anybody have a crystal ball when this might wrap up? Because I think the village is pretty good at refunding escrow pretty promptly if there are, money left over. So I don't think it's a question of you finish, you get all your approvals and it takes 6 months to get the escrow released if there's a balance, back to the applicant. So we don't have any idea. I mean, Frank, or maybe William.
I mean, there's really no way to tell exactly when, the applicant's going to wrap up. But like you said, the only thing that that I can say that I've noticed in my tenure here, my short tenure here, is that escrow is returned rather promptly. So if I don't foresee that being an issue at all. So
Um, Unfortunately, you're at a meeting where there's only 3 planning board members, so we all have to agree in order to make it a meaningful vote.
And I'm only concerned that we're setting a precedent, and we're going to then spend more time entertaining escrow reduction requests than actually doing planning board work, if we don't have a rationale for this. I'm open to reducing it. That's not a problem, but
Well, I'm comfortable with the staff making the recommendation, and if Frank, now that he is officially our building inspector, congratulations, Frank. I understand that happened over the summer, but nobody told us. Maybe he has a little bit more juice. He can actually follow through and get some changes made to the schedule of payments for escrow if he feels that it's not warranted or something. As a person who may be an applicant at some time, I'd rather the village not be holding my money if they didn't have to. Just my own personal opinion.
Well, you're not getting any interest in the bank, so you may as well have the village hold your money.
Well, that's true too. But
So Frank, you got to a number of 8,500. How did you do that? Maybe I need to hear your rationale.
Just by looking at several different towns and the type of fees that they charge, and it was considerably less than 14,500, considering all the review that had to be done on this property, wetlands, site plan.
So we're comparing our fees, our escrow schedule to another villages or towns legally enacted escrow schedule. I have a hard time with that because we're bound by our laws. And so there's nothing about this application that makes it particularly, the language in our code, it has to be a special condition peculiar to a site. It's inappropriate or unnecessary, or strict compliance with the requirements could cause a hardship, extraordinary and unnecessary hardship. I don't know that situation exists, and I have complete sympathy for the applicant. I get it, but I am really reluctant to reduce an escrow that's mandated by law if we don't meet these very special, peculiar, inappropriate, extraordinary hardships. I have a hard time reconciling those two thoughts. I don't know, maybe Christy, maybe, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, you talk about it being a hardship or a particular something peculiar about the situation, and this is the thing. And again, I represent the village, not the applicant at all, but the code says also that a minor and or a major subdivision as it relates to making these escrow fees. And if you look at the code doesn't have anything, it doesn't say anything about a major or minor. What the code talks about is a preliminary and a final. And so that's the discrepancy.
Well, and the difference in the fee between a major and a minor is $2,000. So I have no problems, going along with reducing it by $2,000, and basically imparting a judgment call that this is more in the nature of a minor application.
Yeah.
But to go down, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, so Ms. Goldstein, I think you raised some valid points and concerns. I think, one of the things that the board could consider, and the code does provide the board flexibility to reduce it. And in this instance, I certainly think at the bare minimum that the escrow fee should be reduced by $1,000 from a major to a minor. And I think the board can certainly give due consideration to the board is reviewing the site plan and the wetlands permit at the same time, which are duplicative fees. Previously, certain applications would require a wetlands permit, but not a site plan review. The board's policy has changed, but I don't think the code has been updated to reflect that. So I think if you reduce, by 5,000, or if you get to the 8,500, 9,000, I think that would be appropriate.
Well, HCZMC they have an environmental consultant. It's not the same group of consultants.
But there's a separate escrow
There's
requirement
separate
for
right.
HCM consistency
Let me
review of
just, let me just
$1,500.
clarify. We didn't change the policy with regards to site plan and wetlands. If the property is more than a half an acre or more, our code always said we were supposed to do a site plan. The planning board just wasn't doing it. So it got pointed out to us that we weren't doing it. But there's something to be said for having two fees for the same review. I can buy that argument. I really can. So I don't know about everybody else.
I just
but,
think there's other levels of review, which is why HCZMC has their own, in this
Right, so we leave that line alone. We can reduce the site plan by, what is it, you said 2,000?
2,000.
And the 3,000 for the wetlands, it's gonna be encompassed into the site plan review. It's all gonna be done by the engineer, Brian.
Well, you
That would
still
put
need, I mean,
That would put us at $9,000, which is pretty close to what Mr. Tavalacci indicated as 8,500.
Right,
again, though, HCZMC has a different, they have got to do consistency on the wetlands permit. So you have another layer there. And yes,
But
it's the
there's
same engineer. It's the same engineer, but they have an environmental consultant for that as well. So I have no problem going down 2,000. What else do I hear? Richard, I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, I'm okay with 9.
And Ms. Goldstein, I would just again remind you that there is a separate line item for consistency escrow for HCZM.
I understand that. I do understand that.
okay,
I just don't want to set precedent, but if everybody else is going for it, so we would reduce it to 9,000.
that's, sounds good to me. So, do we need a resolution of this? Can we just do this on a motion? Our esteemed attorney?
I'm just thinking. Honestly, I think you could do it on the motion. I don't think it requires a
Okay,
resolution.
so I need a motion to approve the request for reduction in escrow, reducing it from 14,000 to 9,000.
Can I just modify that to say that this is a circumstance by circumstance review, and based on the particular facts presented here, we're entertaining this motion? I just want to make it as narrow as possible.
Okay, I have no problem with that. Do I have a second for the motion as amended?
I'll second that.
Wait, who made the motion?
You made the motion, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'll make the motion. You can second. There's only 3 of us here tonight. Okay,
You're the chair. You can't make a motion.
I can't?
She can make a motion.
I can make a motion. I can make a motion. No.
You
All right,
can.
Richard made the motion, Cindy seconded. And let's do a vote. Richard,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Thank you very much
Okay.
for your courtesy. We appreciate it.
Welcome. You're welcome. Sorry it was around in circles, but we got there.
No worries. Thank you.
Can we maybe, have somebody, Christy and William and Amber, take a look at this and maybe make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees or someone to change the code if this is something that's worth doing?
I think, Frank, didn't you say that this was something that you were interested in doing, was setting the fees, you and William?
Yeah, he just mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So staff is going to, staff will look into this, and staff will make a recommendation to the planning board. And if the planning board then wishes to move it forward to the Board of Trustees, then the planning board can do so.
Okay,
Great.
sounds good. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. That's the end of item number 2A. That brings us to item 3. We have minutes from June 10th, 2020 before us for approval. Does anyone have any comments on these minutes?
No, I don't.
Neither do I. I'm just so happy. I think we have a good minute person now
Yes.
on board.
Yes.
We don't have a single comment. I don't have a single comment.
Kudos.
Kudos to the person who was Barbara, I believe, right? Barbara did the minutes. Kudos to Barbara.
Right, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we need a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Your turn, Cindy. I second.
Heavy
Okay.
lifting tonight.
I know. Cindy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. Okay, we're gonna skip 4A and go to 4B, Orienta Avenue. Orienta Avenue is an application for subdivision. We have addressed this at length. The public hearing is still open. Is someone here from the applicant wishing to make any statement? And I do believe we got a letter from a member of the public today, and that letter indicated that he wishes to speak at the public hearing tonight. So let's first, is there someone here from the applicant who wishes to, well, they should come up to the participant, or whatever you call what we are, panelist, whatever this is. Okay. Okay, you here by yourself?
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Board. Kristen Motel from Cuddy and Fader. I represent the property owner for 888 Orienta. I believe Adam Wexstein is also attending the meeting. Mr. Long, I don't know if he can be elevated to a speaker. He represents the applicant.
Right, okay. Okay, we have the two attorneys here. Okay, do you all have anything that you would like to add? I mean, we do have some questions, but
Sure.
we'll continue with the public hearing. If, I don't know if the person who wishes to speak, Mr. Teekert, Stuart Teekert, is he in the audience? Is he?
No, he's having difficulty logging on. I don't know.
Can he call in? I don't know if he's.
I'll ask
watching.
him.
All right, I will read his letter to us of today. Dear Chair Savolt and members of the Planning Board, I am writing because I don't believe the subdivision plat before you for 888 Orienta Avenue meets the requirements of Village Law, Section 7-728, subdivision review, approval of plats, development of filed plats. 7-728-4A states that, quote, preliminary plat means a drawing prepared in a manner prescribed by local regulation showing the layout of a proposed subdivision, including but not restricted to road and lot layout and approximate dimension, key plan, topography and drainage, all proposed facilities unsized, including preliminary plans and profiles at suitable scale and in such detail as local regulation may require. I'm assuming that a quote from our code. I didn't check it. The final plat must include, quote, all information required to be shown on a preliminary plat. I believe there are other deficiencies in this application that I will raise at, topography and drainage are highlighted. So I'm assuming he means that's what's deficient. I believe there are other deficiencies in this application that I will raise at the public hearing, but I believe the topography of the site needs to be completed before adoption of the final subdivision plat. Well, we wouldn't be adopting the final subdivision plat tonight. That would come later. But, I don't know. I guess we need some interpretation of this. So let's see, we have plans for 886. The subdivision is for 886 to change the lot line to annex the back part of the lot at 888. So that's what's before us.
We just, if I may,
Please.
everything in your code for final is on there except the topo on 888, which we had asked for a waiver for, which is within your discretion up front, under the theory that you'd already granted a subdivision for it, and under the theory that ultimately what you get there is going to be different from what you had previously approved. They have to come in with a different grading plan, obviously, as we've discussed.
Right. Okay. Ms. Mason, our esteemed lawyer.
I don't have a copy of this comment. Can someone send it to me, or
Oh,
was
you
it?
don't?
No.
I think it's on, I think it got, did it get posted? It should have been posted, but
It's
we got it. We got it late this afternoon.
It's posted as well.
Okay, but can you shoot it? Is there any way to shoot it to Christie? Hold on.
I see it online, so let me pull it.
Okay. Okay, so there's two things here. One, do we need a preliminary plat with topography and drainage shown at this point in time? And or can we waive that requirement since we had it when the first subdivision was done a couple of years ago? And it has to be done before the adoption of the final subdivision plat. I don't know.
Sorry, I'm trying to read it on the fly, so I need another.
Okay, go right ahead.
We had asked that you grant both in the same meeting.
And that's correct. And I looked it up, and you are able to grant. You're essentially granting both. You're granting one subdivision plat. It's not a preliminary and a final.
Okay.
So under state law, you're permitted to do so. And there's nothing in our code that says otherwise. So that's not a problem. But in terms of the topography, I just want to look at this quickly. So you said that sorry, Mr. Wexstein, but you had said that you had submitted, or that this had been discussed previously.
In my initial letter on the application, I had asked for a waiver of the need to show the topo on 888 because of the fact that all we were really asking to do, and I don't mean any disrespect, was to move the lot line. And because ultimately what is being done on 888 will change once they come up with a specific plan. So that request had been made up front, and the board, obviously under the code, and I can go look at the section, but you have the authority to waive any of the requirements of the subdivision regulations. If we
That's exactly what I'm about to check. So give me a moment.
Is your letter dated July 9th?
That is exactly correct.
Thank you.
Sorry, everyone, bear with me.
It's A 348-20. I'm sorry, that's the
No, it's not.
topo.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I see. The request for the waiver.
Where do you see that, Kathy? Oh, you're seeing
Top
their
of page 3.
On the last page of the July 9th memo.
Right.
Did he cite to a provision of the code in that?
A 348-20.
That's where it shows the requirement. Right.
And check A 348-19.
Okay, general requirements.
Oh, I'm going to leave the lawyers to check the codes.
Sorry about that.
This isn't easy, having everything digitally.
I know it, and I have just
know.
one screen.
It's okay, we're just going to move along.
Well, actually, I have a question, and I think they were asking for the engineer to be promoted so we could ask, we could
Yes,
speak
I
with
just saw
Mr.
that.
Anderson as well.
It's in the chat, a request in the chat.
Right. Because my question is, I wouldn't think it's particularly difficult to put the existing contours on the plat. I understand the proposed might change, but the existing probably has already been done. It's just a question of then recording them on the new plat. Am I missing something? I mean, because there's fill back there, I'm interested in knowing about the contours. So I just, as I said, the existing must exist.
The back portion as it was we do have contours for that. That shows in the original SWEP, but the other property, that was done by another surveyor. So, and that site plan was done by another office.
Well, but they have filed as-built plans for 886, and wouldn't that show?
It wasn't required for our portion. So, you know,
I understand.
cost, that would put more in the cost of that document for the client. So we are only doing their lot. So I'm not, I can get that information, but that's through another office and it will take time and, you know.
Why isn't it publicly available at the village? All that has to be filed at the Village of Mamaroneck, doesn't it?
Was this done when the original subdivision was done of the property? Doesn't this exist already? In the Village of Mamaroneck?
I mean, if there's an as-built drawing of the property, it's available. But I mean, we'd have to incorporate. We're not doing the subdivision map. We're only doing the conceptual plan of the stormwater for
Okay.
888. So that's
when 886 and 888 were created, 886 was built out. So there would be as-built drawings of that, but 888 was not built. So now we're looking to change the lot line to cut 888 in half, front to back.
Right.
So
which we showed on the original stormwater plan. It had the contours, the existing contours for that back portion of the lot. That was on our original plan.
But we don't have the front portion of the lot.
On my property or
does anybody have them?
Somebody has to have it. They already got a subdivision.
Yeah, so it's on record with the town.
Right. But we need it on the plat.
We're not proposing any work on 888. I know the hyper-technical requirements of your code talk about topo. We gave what we had. And after 4 meetings, after my making this request, before we started the process,
I know, here we are at the end.
I don't know what you will learn from that information when there's no specific plan to build on that site. And you have information in the record that the stormwater can be controlled there, the drainage can be dealt with there, both from Mr. Anderson's firm and from your own engineer.
To echo what Attorney Weckstein is saying at the same time, and this was in our October 2nd submission, any work that needs to be done on the property going forward is going to require amended approvals, and as such can require a topo be filed with the village. But all we're asking for tonight is the lot line adjustment. If there's any work going forward and there's any permits issued, we can provide the village with the new topo or an updated topo for either site.
I completely understand. I don't care if the property's developed the week after you get approvals for the lot line change or 10 years after that. I'm not worried about that at all. Not at all. But if the code, we can waive it, I understand. But if the code says, unless it's waived, the plat has to depict the existing and proposed contours. That's there for a reason. And so the fact that it's available somewhere else, I mean, this feels like the engineering commentary. So we finally got an excellent memo from your engineer. I appreciate that. We got it all in one place. That really helps. If we'd gotten that a while ago, we would have been moving quicker. So I'm just trying to follow what's required in the law. And I guess I'm feeling so much resistance when information is publicly available and has already been investigated by your consultants. Why that can't be provided for the plat, I don't understand.
Okay, but the law says that it should be there, but it also says that the planning board can waive that requirement. What information would that give us at this point in time that we would need to change the lot line?
Well, it's not a question of that would provide information on whether or not they can change the lot line. It's a requirement of subdivision unless it's waived by the planning board. I mean, I think we've done this on other applications where
I know we have.
We haven't waived it. And so I'm not an engineer. I'm assuming this information is in the code for a reason, and it's available. I'm not asking anybody to go do, you know, excessive, expensive testing or do a whole SWIP or
Okay.
this.
But we haven't waived it because the applicant didn't ask us to. I remember this application. I couldn't tell you which one it was, but we sent them back and they had to come back with the drawing with the topo on it. But they didn't ask us to waive it either. But we have a request here to waive it.
Right.
Okay.
Is-
I'm reluctant to send the applicant back to the drawing board. We've been through this, we're at the end, we have a draft resolution tonight. We understand that everything has to change as if and when 888, and I'm sure it's not a question of if, it's when 888 is developed. I don't understand what having the topo lines on the map would do for us at this point in time, other than satisfy a requirement of the law. But if we got it when we were reviewing the application, it would be part of our review. But we didn't have it. We did extensive review on the property with the applicant's engineer and our consulting engineer with regards to the SWIP. I'm not sure exactly now what that would change. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking.
It might not, but as I said, is it possible to get at least the contours put on that you have? I mean, Mr. Anderson, you've indicated there are some.
Well, we did not prepare the subdivision map. We were just handling these stormwater plan. Now, I was wondering, in the code, a subdivision map in Westchester County Land Records does not need topography on it. So I'm trying to figure out what type of plat are you looking for? Because I'm telling you, in the county, subdivision maps do not have topo on them. It's like a bare minimum property line and showing lot areas and all the exchanges. So I was wondering where it is in the code that says it has to be on the subdivision plat.
It's our local code.
Yeah, is it on subdivision plat or site plan?
Subdivision regulations.
It's the preliminary plat, at least village law is the preliminary plat, and then
yeah,
in our code, it's the approval of a subdivision plat that requires the contours.
So like I said, we were not hired to create the subdivision map. So, you know.
So who will create the subdivision map?
The map is before you. Dan Meritz has created it. The plat is in front of you. And he is the one who did it. And he took the topo we had for our property.
So there are contour lines for 886?
886, the contour lines are shown. Correct.
Can we, okay, so at least we have something on there?
Yes. It's on the survey. I believe it's also on the plat itself. Hold on. I don't want to mislead you. I may be mistaken.
Not on the as-built.
Oh, it's not. I apologize. It was not on here. And I think the rationale was that we were not intending to do anything on our site as part of the application. So I apologize to the board. I did not mean to mislead you.
No, that's all right. We're
all confused. No, we're not really confused.
So let me ask, maybe Christy, so we have a resolution in front of us tonight. If we were to pass this resolution, we vote separately on accepting the final plat? What's the process here? I guess I do want to keep things moving along, but if we can put some topo lines on the plat, I certainly would be a lot happier.
Well, let me think for a minute.
Or is it the sort of thing that gets done all at one time? I mean, I just don't know.
Well, you can do it all at one time. So this is marked, if I remember, Adam, we discussed this previously, but the plat is marked as just a plat, correct? So it doesn't have preliminary, it doesn't have final. I think if you were to move forward with maybe treating this as a preliminary and then having them have to present the final, that would be a different situation where they'd have to present a quote unquote preliminary plat to you. And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong here, if you may have more knowledge of this than I do. So if I don't know if that's where you're leading, and the idea that maybe this is treated as a preliminary plat and then the final has to be approved once the topo lines are added. Or in the alternative, perhaps you approve it as is, but maybe put the condition on that, I don't know, at some point they have to submit a not a final, but a copy of the plat to you with lines. I don't know what that would entirely do for you because it's after the fact that you've already approved it, but at least, you know, you have that memorialized that they've agreed to add those topo lines. But I would say the simplest way to go about this is to waive that requirement so that it's clean.
And let me, Mr. Anderson, the county does not require topo
No.
lines?
I've never, in fact,
So,
we don't want to put contours lines on because then county maps are there for almost 100 years now, right? If we saw contours on a county map, we'd say doesn't exist like that anymore, right? You know, because you never know what has happened to a property. So putting it on the map, on a subdivision map, is taking a chance, right? And the first paragraph of your code says, except where variation may be specifically authorized by the board. So this is a case where, you know, where you don't have to show the contour maps if it's your decision. But then again, it's like I said, we don't show specifically contours because 50 years down the line, somebody's going to come along, right? It's even for our insurance purposes. They're going to say, oh, the contours were like that, but somebody built on the property, and now who's responsible? The town, the engineer, you know. So you know, if you look on the county records, you're not going to see contours.
But I think that there's a big distinction between Westchester County records that are open for the public to see and rely on for
Right.
many different reasons. So
Right.
this is a little bit different. So, Christy, I'm going to ask you, maybe we have another way to go. So if we were to pass this resolution with some kind of condition talking about the final plat will not be signed off by the chair until the available contour lines are put on it, and then the plat just doesn't get signed until those lines appear. Is that a way to move forward?
Sorry, I'm doing all this on the fly, so I apologize.
No, every time isn't, you know, every application is different. So
I know. So I looked at this previously, and so now I'm just trying to run through the code again, and
and you didn't know about the question that got raised.
No, I didn't realize that this was going to be an issue. Let's see.
None of us did.
And just if I could come at this one more way, the code does specifically provide for the scenario where it requires the contour lines. If there's ever a case to do it, it's when you're approving a lot line change where it's not facilitating any specific development. This is the circumstance if you're ever going to do it.
But we have
That's right.
we have existing contour lines available. Why can't we just, you know, I'm not even asking for what somebody might do with 888 one day. I don't care. I know you can't predict that. I'm not suggesting you do, but we do have historical contour lines because this subdivision was done 10 months ago. So again, I'm not sure of the resistance to put in easily available information. You know, I have no problem waiving, what was the rest of the language? Proposed lines. Why can't we put in, let's see, yeah, existing contours. I can waive proposed contours. I'm okay with that. But we have existing contours. Why not put them in? I mean, I think it's in the code for a reason. I don't know why, but that's kind of where I am at this point.
So wait.
The subdivision was approved, and the site plan obviously for 888 was more recent, but the subdivision was approved to create these two lots, something like 3 or 4 years ago. I have no idea that I can make the representation that's what out there is exactly the same as what was previously filed. I believe we did do a survey. I'm pretty sure we did when we came in for the last lot line change, which was approved in 2019, beginning of 886.
But we have as-built for 886.
Right.
So,
With no
I mean,
contour lines.
Even more of a reason why it's appropriate to waive it at this point.
Well, Tina, I would say, if I could speak on behalf of 888 Orienta, it's not resistance as much as it is the time and the cost and the number of appearances before this board. We have given everything that's been asked. We've requested a waiver from this provision. Attorney Wechstein's client has requested the waiver, and we've provided you everything that you've asked for. It's creating an undue burden on both parties at this point. And, you know, I guess the question is, what new information would that provide that would change any decision this board would make tonight?
Well, that's why I'm trying to find a way forward to get the existing contour lines, but adopt a resolution awaiting somebody taking existing lines and putting them on the new.
The existing lines are before 886 was built. And
No,
so
we should have as-built plans for 886. All right, look, I'm not gonna prolong this. I just prefer to not grant waivers, and I prefer to follow our code. And yes, you have provided everything we've asked for, but it's taken a long time. And so if you want to talk about the resolution, I do have some questions and thoughts, but
Okay.
very minor.
Before we do that, we need to either grant a waiver or add something to the resolution. So if we're talking about granting a waiver, again, we need a motion. Is this a motion vote, or does something need to get put into the resolution?
Which vote?
To waive the
waiver.
requirement for the topo lines to be on the plat.
I would add it as part of your resolution, then you just have one vote on the resolution.
Okay.
Unless,
All right.
well, if there's this agreement, I think you should actually vote on waiving it, but then we'll memorialize that in the resolution. So I would.
Okay. Okay, this has to be unanimous vote because there's only 3 of us here.
I understand.
Again, if we had other people here, it might be different, but right now it has to be unanimous. Do I have a motion?
I'm really confused on the waiver. I don't think we can vote on a waiver and then put it in the resolution and vote on that too. Am I missing something, Christy?
The waiver wouldn't be voted on the resolution. It would just be written.
It would just be
that,
memorialized in the
it would just be
resolution.
Oh, just
part
that
Yeah.
a vote was taken
Yeah.
for a
It
waiver.
would- Right. It would be one of the, whereas clauses.
Yes, we would
as
just add
opposed
as
to resolve
whereas.
clauses.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got that. Okay. So we need a motion to waive the requirement for the topo lines to be on the subdivision plat. Does anybody want to make that motion?
Rephrase the question.
Will anyone make that motion?
I can make a motion, so I'm going to make that motion. Will anyone second it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, so the motion's on the table. It's been seconded. Richard,
Yes.
Cindy,
yes, under duress.
we're not twisting you arm. We're not even in the same room.
Oh, yeah. I feel
vote
a
yes.
presence. I feel a presence.
I vote yes. All those people who think we all vote together now today, we don't. Okay, we have a draft, we have pretty much a final resolution in front of us. We got version 5 with some changes requested by the applicant, which were relatively minor. I have one comment on the draft. I don't know if anybody else has any, but the bottom of the first page, the whereas that starts, whereas the planning board acknowledges that the owners of Orient, I guess that should be 888 Orienta as opposed to Orienta 888.
It's called, like, they actually
Oh,
submitted.
that's what it's called? Okay.
It might have
that's
been
okay. I see it, it's
Oh,
up there, yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, no, it was called
The
Orientate.
LLC name, not
That's
the
fine.
address.
Right. Have an approved SWIP that may no longer be valid. At our last meeting, Frank, our building inspector, said it will be no longer valid. As soon as the resolution's passed, he will void that. So it will no longer be valid. And there's also an outstanding permit that needs to be redone as well. And it was a
So,
permit for Phil.
I had
Can
the
we say
permit,
that?
I had the permit in there initially, and then as I thought about it, I was like, it's not really within your discretion, the permit. So that's why I ultimately took it out. So we sort of
Oh,
acknowledge the SWIP,
Right.
but the planning board doesn't have discretion over the permit. So I just didn't think it was appropriate for the resolution.
Instead of saying, well, we're just acknowledging the fact that it exists and will be voided. We're not voiding it ourselves. We're just
No,
saying.
with the SWIP, it made more sense to me because
I understand that.
right, but with the
Right.
permit, I felt like it was,
Right.
if you want it back in, I'm happy to add it, but like couched in the language that says that they acknowledge.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
I would be more comfortable with that. Let's be specific, because what applies to the SWIP applies to any other permits already approved, because if it's developed someday in the far future, they'll come back in and get whatever they need to get. It may be something completely different.
so if we're to do that,
Approved SWIP, and why don't you say approved SWIP and some open permits?
And any
Yeah,
other
and-
permits previously granted.
Well, it can't be a closed permit if the work was done. It would have to be an open permit that would be voided. So you can't just catch any permit.
an existing permit,
Any existing permit.
so it says.
Frank, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, I am. There's only one permit on that property right now. That can be
Okay.
void if you vote tonight.
Okay. So Frank will, take care of it. And we're just acknowledging that it exists and Frank's going to take care of it. That's all we're saying. We're not voiding it ourselves.
No, and if Frank ultimately chose for whatever reason not to revoke it, that's his discretion, but I don't.
That's correct. That's correct.
So right now it says, whereas the planning board acknowledges that the owners of Orienta 888 have an approved SWIP and existing permits that will no longer be valid once the lot line is changed as confirmed by the building inspector, and then it continues as is.
Correct. That's the only thing I have.
All right, so in the whereas clause before that, there are two references to hypothetical SWIPs. I think the applicant has called them conceptual SWIPs.
Yeah.
So I think we should get rid of hypothetical and replace conceptual.
That's fine. Let me.
Okay. And I also had a question, it's on the second page, the next to the last whereas clause is where we talk about type 2 action under SECRA. I would prefer to see that more on the front page. This is just stylistic, but maybe because that happened earlier in the process.
Wherever you like it, just normally we do it
chronologically.
And I don't know why well, this one doesn't have a date.
It doesn't have a date, right. So
Yeah.
if we could move that to make it the fourth whereas on the front page,
Okay, let me count.
it would be the fourth one just above.
Yep.
Where we've, is my suggestion.
The public hearing, yes. Or just under the public hearing.
Under the public hearing.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then I think Mr. Weckstein only had the one change talking about the County Department of Health. Is that right?
That's the only comment. Yes, thank you.
Makes sense. It was unclear otherwise.
I would ask that you
The
close.
ambiguity.
I would ask that you close the public hearing before you vote.
Yes,
If
we
you
just
can
have to make
start.
sure that there's no other, as we have pretty much wrapped this up, does anyone have any comments? If there's any members of the public who, additional members of the public who want to speak, and then we can close the public hearing. Nothing? Nobody?
Let me see. Let me see something.
Can you hear me?
Secret.
Yeah, I'd like to make a bunch of comments. I wasn't able to comment last time. I don't believe the board should approve this.
We need your name. I'm sorry. We recognize your
I'm
voice,
sorry.
but for the record, could you
Okay.
state your name?
Sure. It's Stuart Kiekert, T as in Thomas, I-E-K-E-R-T. So I'm going to go through a bunch of things. I think I'm going to start with the applicant's October 7th letter to the Frank Tablachi and the village consulting engineer. I mean, it purports to be a summary of facts. They may well be facts. There's little evidence to indicate that. The first paragraph at the end, it says the SWIP was approved earlier this year on February 2nd, 2020. I'm not aware of that. I don't see it on your agenda. I asked for it today through FOIL and copied Mr. Long. I had no response. So I'm not sure that's a fact. The second paragraph on the page, about halfway down, it says the concept plan demonstrates that based on the property characteristics, including soil types and maximum coverage, an amended SWIP will effectively manage the stormwater from the zoning compliant houses that meets the maximum building coverage and impervious surface requirements. Without a SWIP, I don't know how the concept plan demonstrates that. The concept plan is rather sketchy. You have a whole set of Cultex in the front yard that apparently water goes into, but doesn't leave. These have been explained as pre-treatment. If they're pre-treatment, they should be flowing somewhere to the actual treatment. So the concept plan is really rather vague. On the next page, the second paragraph down at the end, it says, thus the consideration of coverage, which was used in the concept plan for the maximum coverage of the 888 Orienta Avenue lot after subdivision, is the appropriate design parameter for the SWIP analysis. Do we know what the maximum lot coverage is? I mean, I don't think what's represented on the conceptual plan represents maximum lot coverage, which is 35% of 25,000 square feet. So I'm not sure how any of these are calculations without a SWIP. I'm not sure how this board knows that this system, there's a system here that will handle it. The next paragraph down, the last sentence says the natural flow for the runoff will stay the same in both direction and volume as current conditions remain. They're raising the grade of this lot 6 feet. Current conditions aren't going to remain, and the flow is going to change. The paragraph that starts, the current house at 886 Orienta Avenue was built with an approved stormwater system. My understanding is there's no evidence of that. The required by code as-built SWIP plan was never filed, and there has never been, according to village FOIL responses, an as-built survey of the property with topos and utilities. That was a requirement of 886's building permit. So these are statements that are being made without much basis. The end of that paragraph, it says, after construction, such surface flow will continue to flow west to east to the downhill properties as allowed by New York State and Village Code. I would hope that the board would be curious about which code, village code they're relying on. For that, I think it may be that as long as you don't change the conditions, you can continue to float water through your property. But 886 property has been raised 6 feet, 7 feet, I think 7 feet. So the south to east flow just ain't happening. It then goes on to refer to use the village consulting's engineer's memo as evidence that everything's good. It talks about the September 22nd, 2020 memo, and that memo reads about the flow. This flow originates off-site and flows southeast from the Westchester Day School across 886 at Orient Avenue, and then flows to the northeast corner of the existing 888 Oriental lot. Please go down and look. Unless it's flowing through that stone wall built on the edge of 886, it's not flowing to that southeast corner. So that's just not factual. So I would also note that on the subdivision plat that was submitted, there's a contradiction. They show a building envelope for each house. They show 886. They show 888. They show the, I guess it would be north property line as requiring a 20-foot setback on 886 and a 25-foot setback on 888. I just don't think that's the case. I would guess they are similar, which would increase the building envelope and lot coverage for 888. Just a couple other points. As I said, there are no as-built for 886 that the village will admit to. I really don't think that requiring existing topos can be referred to as hyper-technical requirements. I mean, I see a lot of attorneys at this meeting and engineers. This is pretty basic stuff. So I have a question. Will any plan for a new home on this lot return to the planning board under 34275, which requires site development plan review?
To whom are you addressing?
Whoever can answer that.
If the lot is less than half an acre, I don't have these numbers at my fingertips. It does not need to come back to the planning board for a site plan review. It goes to the building department, and this building department is aware that any approved SWIP for that property will be voided, and a new SWIP will be made.
Right.
Let me finish, please. When the original subdivision was done, there were some conceptual plans for 888, which the house now has to be smaller because the lot is smaller. And the concept plan took that into consideration with regards to everything that we have reviewed and our engineers have reviewed for 888, based on a smaller lot.
Great. I have all those plans according to the subdivision plat submitted by the applicants. The new lot is 24,396 square feet, which I believe is more than a half acre. So if that's the case, it will be
It would come
returning to you, correct? Okay.
If that's the case, yes.
Okay. I've looked at the conceptual stormwater plan, or what they're calling site plan. It's not really a stormwater plan. It lacks vast amounts of detail. And I just make some comments quickly on it. That the front Coltex, which have been described as pre-treatment, don't have an outlet from them, so I'm not sure how they're pre-treatment. There appears to be no overflow marked on the rear Coltex. The backyard Coltex appear only to be connected to a small slot drain on an incredibly small patio. There's no connections to the roof drains or any other parts of the property. The plan as drawn clearly drains water onto the adjacent properties. I'm not sure that's allowed by our code, and I hope you will require them to cite the code that allows them to do that.
Mr. Teagan, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Are you talking about 886 or 888 at this point in time?
I'm talking about 888.
Okay, so there is no plan right now to build anything on 888.
No, I understand, but you're approving, as I understand it, a stormwater plan that you're vouching will.
We're approving a lot line change. That's the application before us, a lot line change.
Right, but I thought one of the things that came out on the Osborne-Gilcher division is that the board had to assure that stormwater could be managed from the site. And my point is that the conceptual plan, there is no way of telling, because of the lack of detail, whether you can do that. That's my only point. I will wrap up. I would like to say I think this deserves more review. This site is proposed with the plans they submitted in the conceptual site plan show the site, most of the site being raised 6 feet in elevation. 886, back to 886, they raised that site 2 feet above what was approved by the planning board based on their own submission here on the subdivision plat. So if we're looking at 8 feet above existing grade, I just don't think that's a good practice for this planning board to endorse. The Village Board of Trustees is reviewing our comp plan right now. And this is a quote from it about subdivision regulations for natural cover / topography. The recommendation is require land to be subdivided, to be laid out and improved to generally conform to existing topography, to minimize grading, cut and fill, and to retain as much as possible the natural contours, limit stormwater runoff, and conserve natural cover and soils. I would suggest that's exactly what's not going on here. And I know I haven't passed the comp plan, but I do think that that is a worthy goal to try and meet. So I thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you for your comments. Does anybody want to address any of these? Everything is conceptual. It's not hypothetical, it's conceptual. We don't have any plans that we're approving for 888. Either building plans, fill plans, stormwater management plans. We raised the question of whether or not the light line should be changed because the original subdivision had the stormwater management plan for 888 extending into the back part of the lot. That back part of the lot would disappear from that lot, and that's why we went down that path. We just needed to show, in my mind, that 888 was still a viable lot. And that there could be a house and a stormwater management system put on there at some point in time in the future, which would have to go through all the review processes as required by our code. Am I saying anything that's not correct here? Is this what we've been doing for the past 3 months? 3 months, right? 3 months, 3 months. I don't really, I can't speak to what happened on 886 and whether or not the grade was raised 2 feet above what was approved by a planning board for a few years ago, or whether, they've been before the board multiple times. The last time they were before the board was another lot line change. I can't tell you whether or not water's draining from the day school onto the property. I'm not an engineer. But did anybody hear any comments that gives them pause with moving forward with what we've just all discussed?
I mean, I think they're good comments. I don't think there's anything we can do about them right now. So it doesn't.
Right. 888 will be back before review if and when anything ever gets built on there, and it will be addressed at that time.
Weren't we saying that they weren't coming back? I thought there was.
Well, if it's a half an acre, then we need to do a site plan review.
Is it a half an acre of disturbance?
It's a half an acre of the lot itself,
The lot,
not the
okay.
disturbance.
Okay.
We looked this up for 652 shore acres.
Okay,
Right. We didn't think it was coming back to us,
right.
but I mean, I didn't look at the size of the lot. Okay, all right.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Yes, are we at that point? Is there anyone else who wants to speak? I don't, William, you'll have to tell us if there's anybody else who wants to speak.
Madam Chair, I don't see anyone.
Okay, so I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I need a second. Thank you. Okay, Richard,
Yes.
I say yes. Cindy?
Yes.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Okay, so now I need a motion to approve the resolution as amended. And everyone remembers what those amendments were, right?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Okay, Cindy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay,
May I just ask 2 things? Is it considered now that you've granted both preliminary and final? And the only other thing is, I don't know what your practice is, but if the chairwoman doesn't normally sign the plat outside of the boards, or the resolution, excuse me, other than at a meeting, I would ask that you authorize her to do so. We do have some time constraints.
I'm sorry, you want us to authorize me to sign
The resolution of approval outside of the meeting, if that's not something you normally do.
Oh,
In other words, some boards wait until their next meeting to have the chairperson sign the resolution.
No, she'll sign
Oh,
it within a day or
when
so.
it's cleaned up and it's fixed, they send it to me, I sign the last page, I scan it, send it back. We're done.
Thank you. I'm trying to make, I appreciate it.
And then I have to go just in to sign the plat when all of those papers are done and everything, because I can't scan that in, right? Okay, all right. Maybe we'll see you again sometime when 888 gets to go.
You won't see me, but I really do appreciate your patience. I know this is a lot of work, and I appreciate it.
It was a lot of work on everybody's side, and let's just hope that it all works out. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
all right,
very
thank you very much. William, keep an eye out for Phillips Park Road to see if they show up, okay? All right, if they're not here, we'll, oh God, I'm getting pop-up notices on my computer. Excuse me, it's blocking everything. Okay, let me close out the files from that. Okay. All right, next up on the agenda is 22 Lake Road. They've been before us before. The public hearing had been opened at a point in time. I don't have that at my fingertips right now. The applicant went to Harbor and Coastal Zone Management. They received consistency with the LWRP in, let's see, when was this? September. So now they're back before us. They're here for a wetlands permit. So is the applicant here? Can we promote them? And the applicant can remind us, since it's been a while since you've been here, what this project is.
Certainly. Hi, my name is Eric Jacobson. I'm the architect for 22 Lake Road and the Hirschbergs. They're the owners of the property. And as you mentioned, we were before the board back in May originally. And the project is to remove a 400 square foot elevated wood deck that's in need of repair. It's from the original construction of the home about 40 years ago, and replace it with a 745 square foot elevated wood deck. Basically going to take the same deck, remove it. We're going to replace it, but expand it. And it's interesting to note too that currently that the deck is violating the rear yard setback. So it's 3 feet over the rear yard setback. We're going to remove that violation, and we're going to have a zoning code compliant elevated wood deck. So as you mentioned, we did receive a determination of consistency from the Harbor Coastal Zone Management Commission. They asked us to do a number of things, including hire a environmental consultant. So we hired Beth Evans, and she prepared a report. And basically, much of the drainage stays as is because it's an open slat wood deck. The water will fall through. And so there's no need to collect any of the rainwater. There's no ability to do that and put it into any type of Cultec or dry well. The grade remains exactly the same as it is right now. And there will be 9 piers that are going to be installed, and we space them as far apart as possible so we reduce the amount of soil disturbance. The soil disturbance will be done by hand, as there's no way to get a machine back in there. We've submitted plans for an erosion control. And at this point, the only thing that we're waiting for is your approval, and then we'll go to the building department and architectural review board.
Okay, I think you need to go to architectural review board before we give our final approval. Is that, or no, because we're not doing site plan? Somebody please enlighten me on this. We're just doing a wetlands permit here. Cindy's nodding.
I think so.
Christy, you think so what? They go to BAR? They go to BAR? No.
Nothing for BAR to do because it's a deck.
Right.
Yeah, and you're working with the wetlands.
Really? Okay.
Right.
Okay. I know we've had questions about this and issues with this. Okay, we don't. Okay. Anybody have any questions? There's nothing updated. Did we get a copy of the Beth Evans report? I'm not sure.
No, I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either. So anything that goes to HCZM of this matter should also come to planning board. That's a pretty much a planning rule here. Any kind of planning study, any kind of study, anything like that. But I don't feel that this should hold us up in any way.
If I may just read the last paragraph of Beth's report. It's a 2-page report. Most of it's a picture. And basically she says, in my opinion, as a professional wetland scientist, that the proposed project will have no adverse impact on the regulated shoreline areas or immediately adjacent to this property. There will be no adverse impact to wildlife, water quality, or the visual character of the shoreline resulting from this project.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, and to have a 7-0 vote from HCZMC, I think is fairly rare. So
That's true. That is very rare.
they were on board with this project. So I personally don't have any questions or
I
any
don't
concerns.
have any questions or anything either. What about you, Richard?
No, I'm good.
Okay, can we direct the staff to prepare a resolution to approve the wetlands permit?
Do we need a motion for that?
I don't think so.
No, I'm good.
We're good? We're good. We're good.
We're good.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Jacobson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hopefully we get you on the agenda for the next meeting and have a resolution that we prepare for you and we approve, okay? There doesn't seem to be any questions or any problems with this. Okay. Staff, if you could just get us the Beth Evans memo just for our review beforehand. And then it can go in the resolution that we read it. Okay. All right, thanks very much. Okay, next up on the agenda, if we don't have anyone here from Phillips Park Road yet, is 139 East Prospect.
Madam Chair, they're here.
Here.
355 Phillips Park Road is available.
Okay, let's do them first because it's just a resolution. I don't want to say just a resolution. It's a resolution. And it's going to be a little bit faster than. And I want to thank the staff for their hard work to get this resolution before this board, before the meeting. Thank you very much. I know it was difficult. For those of you who follow along, you might recognize that we have new planning staff and they are certainly doing a bang-up job to come up to speed as quickly as they can. Okay.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
You're welcome.
William and Amber, if you could just memorialize whatever the changes are, because I don't have the latest Word draft of it, and I just want to make sure that someone is memorializing those changes.
Before we get into that, I just want to, we have an open public hearing still on this application. I want to make sure that if there's anyone here to speak about 355 Phillips Park Road, they have an opportunity to do so. I don't think there's any issues at this point in time on this one.
Madam Chair, I don't see anyone who wishes to speak. Oh, wait a minute, there is someone.
That's Mr. Stein, I believe, our engineer. Good evening, everyone.
Oh, okay. We
Apologize
recognize.
for.
Okay, before you begin, can we close the public hearing, or do you guys want to present anything to us, or we all pretty much done?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything further. Michael Stein with Hudson Engineering. Just also letting you know that I'm here if there's any questions that I can help with.
Okay. Okay.
We have the memo from Susan Oakley from September 28th, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, right. September 28th. But did we get this landscape plan is so small, I can't see I have to get out hold on, I have my handy dandy lighted magnifying glass to see the date on it. No, it's before then. Okay.
So there was I wrote an email regarding the revision dates on the landscape plans for this application, and they were never updated. And in fact, some of the names of the landscape plans, the roof deck and what are they calling it? The roof deck and landscape plan. The name of the plan was changed in multiple emails or multiple times it was sent. And I just think we have to all be a little more conscientious about when there are changes to update the date on the landscape plan with every revision, and to also keep some kind of consistency from the applicant in regards to the names of the plans.
If I could,
Yeah, it is confusing it's very confusing for us, especially since everything's digital now.
Right, and so you're gonna find that same August 31st date on at least the floor
Everything.
plans I have in hand.
Oh, okay.
I could respond to that, Chair, if you don't mind. This is Christy
Please.
Adana. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for the request tonight, and I appreciate you trying to accommodate me. Anyway, on behalf of the applicant, so the issue with the landscape plan is, yes, when we made the last revision, which was after the April 22nd board meeting, in order to incorporate the note that was requested from HCMC, which was that after initial planting fertilization, there would not be further fertilization of the landscaping. That was the only change that was made from that plan, and we do apologize that the date was not updated from August 31st. That plan was submitted, I believe, before Ms. Oakley issued her memo. We only saw Ms. Oakley's memo last Friday, October 9th, and we were not aware of the recommendations that she had incorporated from Mr. Hoger, which was to make all of the plantings on the roof deck native species. So, and I don't want to speak for Ms. Oakley, please feel free to jump in, but we did have our landscape architect, Mr. Earl Govin, reach out to Ms. Oakley to discuss how we could possibly incorporate those native species. And I believe there was some communication and agreement on what those species could be. And so we think we have an understanding about what would be satisfactory to Ms. Oakley in that regard. We do have a plan. It was because we only learned about the memo on Friday. The plan was revised yesterday, and we would certainly be able to submit it to the board and to the consultants as a condition of any approval that the board was inclined to grant.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we have agreement on the landscape plan, but we don't have a final landscape plan. Okay.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but I would, if you're going to be considering something after the fact, I don't think that you should be moving forward with closing the public hearing tonight. Even though it's been described to you, you're going to be looking at it after the fact. And so you either don't accept it or you accept it and hold the public hearing open.
Okay.
I can present it to the board right now. I can share my screen and present it to the board. Literally, the only thing that is changing is the types of species that are going to be on the roof plan. And I hope I'm not misrepresenting anything, but they have already been reviewed by Ms. Oakley. So if
the substitution names have been reviewed by me. I have not seen the final plan. Just to clarify.
I apologize. I didn't mean to misstate that.
How does the board feel about this? You want to share the screen and see the plan? I mean, it's not a complicated plan.
And then William, you'll need to add it to the agenda as well.
To the resolution.
The backup. Well, it will need to be added to the resolution. And if there is a problem with dates, I also would like to go back and look at the dates on the resolution to make sure that we're not having.
There's no reference to L1 on the resolution.
I believe there is.
There is.
There is.
It actually, the resolution doesn't reflect even the date before that plan. I believe the resolution reflects March 25th, at least the resolution that I was reviewing. But I do have.
L1, I'm sorry, I got it, yeah.
I do have the plan that I could share, and it does have the corrected, updated date of October 13th.
Well, if you can share it, we may as well look at it now. It doesn't mean we can.
Understood. I would be happy to do it if we could all come to some sort of resolution. Also, just given the timing that, because we only found out about the memo on Friday, we certainly would have provided it sooner had we known. So we were just trying to kind of catch up as much as we could.
Okay. We're in a period of transition, and so
no, absolutely, I completely understand. It's just we were trying to respond as promptly as we could under the circumstances.
Okay, all right. So we have to give you, William, you have to give Christy Adana screen sharing privileges. She's got it, okay.
Are you able to see the screen now?
Yes. If you can make it a little, can you make it a little bigger? Yeah, great. Okay, very good. You'll have to scroll for us. Yeah, okay.
This is the plans legend that incorporates the suggested replacement native species on the roof deck plantings, which are here. And you'll see that that is the last revised date of October 13th, 2020. And also includes the note from the HCZM regarding fertilizer.
It's a minor point in the plant legend, but there's a misspelling of one of the plant names. The second to last under roof deck plantings, 54. It's panicum. It starts with a P, panicum.
Oh, there's a P missing. Okay.
Yeah, it's minor, but.
And this is the plan that we were prepared to submit yesterday, but given the timing, we weren't able to.
And everything to the left of on our screen that we can't see is the same as what was submitted with the date of August 31st.
Yes.
Okay.
The only change was to the species
And this one has the note from HCZM on it that I have in my hand. Okay. All right. So the only change that this requires, if we're fine with it, is changing the date of the L1 on page 1 of the resolution to the 13th.
There are some notes on the plan that are incorrect.
Okay.
I mean, I think I feel like I need to take my lead from Susan. If you want more time to look at this, I'm inclined to let you do that rather than try to do it on the fly tonight. But
right. Well, since I've already found two errors, then maybe it should be submitted.
Okay.
So that we're all not sitting here while I review it.
And that would allow me.
It's up to the board.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Susan. But that would allow me to double check the dates on the resolution to make sure that we don't have.
And I have a few sort of not substantive, but just sort of language recommendations on the resolution. So, I mean, I think we have some housekeeping to do here. And I would prefer if Susan took her time and looked at this in the light of day.
Okay. I think we all were hoping that we could wrap this up tonight, but it looks like we're going to carry it over to the next meeting. The public hearing will remain open. If anyone from the board besides Cindy has any other comments on the resolution, please get them to William. And Susan will review the revised landscape plan. And so Ms. Adana, if you could then submit that formally to the planning department, and then that would be disseminated accordingly.
Understood. We can certainly do that as soon as possible to give Ms. Oakley time. I apologize again. We were just
That's okay.
scrambled to be as responsive as possible.
This comes under the heading of we tried.
No, understood. There were some minor language edits that we had. I don't know if it would be beneficial to go through that now, or if the board would prefer
Language
to.
edits on the resolution?
Well, it was just specifically with respect to the condition 2 that the board had discussed at its last meeting. We discussed it at length regarding the periodic inspections. And so since we're here, and if the staff is going to be going back and looking at the resolution, I just thought maybe I could bring those to the board's attention briefly to see if you would be amenable to certain changes. We're certainly on board with the concept, willing to do it. It was just kind of a few language modifications that we would ask to be considered.
You want to do it offline? You can get in touch with the staff. Or
Okay, if that's how the board would prefer to handle it.
I think some members of the planning board also had some changes to that paragraph as well. So this way, we won't get into a back and forth with wordsmithing the paragraph among a bunch of people.
Understood.
William will be the repository for comments, and everyone get their comments to him. Okay?
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the public hearing remains open. This gets carried over to our next meeting.
Madam Chair, did you ask whether or not anyone from the public wished to speak?
I think we did, didn't we?
I think she did.
I don't remember.
Yes, I
I
did.
believe you did.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now that brings us to item 4D on the agenda, which is 139 East Prospect Avenue. This is a application to build a multi-family dwelling. But we'll let them bring us up to date. They too received consistency from the Harbor and Coastal Zone Management Commission, and they're back before us. We are here to do, what is it? Site plan review and a special use permit for residential and the commercial zone. Is that correct? Okay. And can we elevate the applicant's representatives? Mr. Joffrey, who had to sit through this whole meeting.
No worries.
Sorry.
No, thank you very much. Good to see you all again. For the record, my name is Tony Joffrey, a member of the law firm Cuddy and Fader, on behalf of the applicant 139 East Prospect LLC. Mr. Long, I'm also joined by Michael Stein, Rex Gedney, and Carlito Holt. If they can be elevated to presenters as well, please. So
by the way, your application has the distinction of the last application where we actually got some paper and not all digital. So you came in right before we all went on lockdown.
Indeed. Our first appearance before you was on Elvis's birthday, January 8th. And we appeared before the HCZMC also in January, and then appeared before your board again in April and June. And in June, you adopted a negative declaration in connection with this application.
Right.
And then in July, Harbor Coastal determined the application was consistent with the LWRP. To reorient you again, this proposal is for a 4-story multi-family residential building. There will be 8 one-bedroom units and 1 affordable housing unit, which is compliant with the special permit requirements. This is a fully zoning compliant application. And you'll recall in June, the fire inspector provided a memo to your board, and the relevant portion of that memorandum indicated that the site plan proposed actually improved the conditions for fire apparatus and made more room for operations, and that the fire department had no further concerns. When we appeared before the Harbor Coastal Zone Management Commission, there were 2 comments that they asked us to address. We amended our application to include rooftop planters over 10% of the roof area. And the garage entrance and site access will also be enhanced with a well-defined crossing area across the garage entrance to ensure pedestrian safety. And this can be further enhanced with additional safety features such as a pedestrian vehicle presence alert, low-profile plantings at the corners of the garage to ensure pedestrians cross further from the garage to improve sight distances, and/or internal signage in the garage alerting drivers of the pedestrian crossing. So that would bring you up to speed in terms of where we are and the modifications that were made to the application. There were some housekeeping items we did in the forms, so we just corrected some of the typos in the forms. And if you like, I can have Mr. Gedney walk you through the rooftop plan, or if there's any other questions, we can certainly address any questions that the board does have.
Why don't we have Mr. Gedney proceed?
Good evening. If I could share my screen with you.
Okay, you should be able to.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chair, members of the board, Rex Gedney, project architect. I'm pulling up our initial site plan. As Mr. Jaffrey mentioned, our building is a zoning compliant building. And I can walk you through the project itself, but you can see from the rendering in the front elevation, vehicles enter the building here at grade, and there are 2 stories above that with a total of 8 units, 4 per floor. There are single bedroom units, and there is 1 affordable housing unit as required by the code. This is the ground floor plan. We are providing 8 spaces, 1 being an ADA accessible, and an elevator. All units are, again, accessible via elevator. These other drawings have to do with egress requirements and code issues, building code. This was the FAR calculation tables. This is the existing survey in which, as you can see, the existing building is actually non-compliant with regard to its property lines. This will all be improved as we construct our new building. Sorry for the delay there. There are some engineering drawings, which if you like those to be described, Mike Stein from Hudson Engineering is here. These are the actual floor plans for the units, which are identical. And as Mr. Geoffrey was mentioning, we were requested by HCZM to provide planters in which our mechanical spaces are here for the condensing units for the apartments below. We're going to surround them with raised planters. And I'm sure Ms. Oakley will have some comments, and we can certainly address the plant species and types that will go into the planters. The roof is not accessible to the tenants. It is strictly accessible just for mechanical purposes. And this area will be enclosed by these raised planters. These are the building elevations and sections. And I'm happy to walk you through any of the other details. These are some of the samples of the exterior materials that we'll be using. And as you're all familiar with the site, this is the existing property as it stands today. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has.
And as Mr. Gedney also indicated, Mr. Stein is here available to address any engineering questions that you do have. I do note that Kellard Sessions, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Hildebrand, but the 10-9 memorandum from Kellard Sessions, all items have been addressed.
Yes, I can confirm that. All the outstanding items are taken care of.
Yes, as reflected on the memo. Yes.
I think my only questions at this point are really about landscaping, and I agree with Susan's memo of October 9th that front view of the building is very stark, and I understand there's probably not a lot you can do with it, but I think it would be important to do as much as you can.
Okay, I don't believe we received a copy of that memorandum. I didn't see it on the web, so.
October 9th?
Yes, I don't believe it was with the materials that were included online.
Okay. I don't remember where I got it. I think it was an email that I received.
I think it, yeah, I think we got it by email, but it should have been uploaded.
Yeah, I'm looking at the materials right now, and I don't see that memorandum. So if that could be provided, and obviously we can certainly take it under advisement and try to address it, but don't have a copy of that right now.
Yeah, I think we certainly need to see whatever you propose. I think it's, at this point, it's there's nothing to discuss. It's just an encouraging of the applicant to find every opportunity to install street trees and foundation plantings in that front area with the sort of dismal looking louvered door. I actually have another question. You got through HCZMC sort of by the skin of your teeth. It was a 4-3 vote.
It was a 4-0 vote. Three members recused themselves.
Oh, three members were, okay, sorry. That's, okay, I'm not even gonna ask. Okay, yeah, because I looked like they were, yeah, you're right, okay, never mind. So this was a
So it was a unanimous
vote, yes.
Unanimous vote. I think
Members
one of the-
attending.
One of the
Okay.
members lives in the regatta, I believe, but other than that, okay, we'd have to look into why they recused themselves, but okay. Okay, so this brings us up to date. We'll make sure that you get a copy of Susan's memo. She does comment on the roof plan and basically, says the front facade, there's nothing proposed for the street side, but maybe you can figure something out. Okay, so unless the applicant has something else to add.
No, I think we've addressed all comments except for the Susan Oakley memo, which, again, once we have the opportunity to review it, we'll
get to you, right?
we can address it.
Okay.
Yes, it helps to have a copy of it, yes.
Yes. That seems to have fallen through the cracks here. Okay, could you stop screen sharing then so that we can turn to the public hearing portion of this? We still have an open public hearing. If history serves us well, we probably have some people who would like to speak about this. As was mentioned as we started this particular item for the agenda, that this project is zoning compliant. This project has also, with a unanimous vote of 4-0, and is consistent with our LWRP. So we are interested in hearing any comments that anybody might have with regards to the project.
Madam Chair, I don't see anyone wishing to speak.
Really? That's a surprise. Okay. The agenda was published, right? And this was published on the agenda. Okay. We'll keep the public hearing open then, and we'll get you a
Madam
copy.
Chair, would it be appropriate to direct a draft resolution to be considered subject to obviously whatever this memo is and what we can address if there are no other issues?
Does staff feel comfortable? Do you have comfortable to do a draft? Certainly can start sketching one out, but I think if all we have left is the landscape plan, I think, anybody have a problem with this?
Nope, that's
Get
fine.
started on the resolution. Maybe we can wrap this all up at the next meeting.
Great.
We did all the heavy lifting early in this project. Right. Is that it then for tonight for 139 East Prospect Avenue? Okay.
Great. I thank you for your time
All
and
right.
wish you a great evening. Good to see you all again.
Sorry, I
Thank
didn't
you.
realize you were here for two things. We could have done the agenda differently so you didn't have to wait around.
No worries. No worries. Thank you very
Sorry.
much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Okay, that brings us to item 5 on the agenda. We have 2 proposed amendments to Village Code for comments to the Board of Trustees on these particular amendments. Okay, let's do the easy one first. That's one. Changes to the village code related to fees charged in lieu of dedicating parkland. And
I would love to have, let the Board of Trustees know that we really appreciate their input, our input on this, but I certainly have nothing to say about this. And I don't think there's anything even to discuss from a planning board
well, I
perspective.
just wanted to tell people what this is. It basically is reducing the fees for units that are including affordable housing. So I think that we applaud their efforts. Anything to encourage more affordable housing. It's certainly needed in this area, as in all of Westchester. And I don't think we have any comments on this. Richard, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay, so we just need to, I can just send an email to the Board of Trustees saying we have no comments. I'll do that tomorrow. Put it on my list of things to do. Okay, the next item is proposed amendments to village codes relating to setback from water bodies. Now, this came before this board once before, back in October, and I actually found my paperwork. I actually had it in a folder called proposed legislation. And now we have a completely different change, proposal to change to us, okay? So, basically this, let's see if I can remember the background. I don't know, Christy, you might want to jump in here and help me out here. Laws where when the zoning code was changed, there was a requirement put in that nothing can be built within 50 feet of the of water, basically. I think it was mean high water line, Long Island Sound, or any body of water that flows into Long Island Sound. And there was no requirement, no variance, waiver, nothing in the law that allowed anything like that. And so the board was approached by someone who wanted to build, and the board recognized that they wanted to perhaps put some sort of a waiver provision or variance provision in this. So that's what we're reviewing now. That sort of sums this up. If it's anything else than that, I'm sorry, this isn't my forte. So that's what we have before us. We have multi-pages of amendments to consider and to comment on. So I'll jump in. This is your forte.
Well, not really, but I mean, so they're amending or proposing to amend two chapters, Chapter 240, which is dealing mostly with HTZMC, and 342, which is, I guess, zoning code. And I guess they've put the analysis onto the shoulders of the zoning board. I think the planning board asked to have that, and we're not going to get it, and that's fine.
And they changed from planning board to zoning board. Yeah.
They specified on page 6, so the ZBA would grant a permit for, building structures, alterations, enlargement, enclosure, whatever, and they lay out the criteria, which is fine. But there are some definitions here that I don't quite follow. They don't seem consistent. So on page 2, they're amending or elaborating on mean high water level for a tidal water body. I mean, my question, and it's probably for the planners, is it really clear which are tidal water bodies? I mean, we've got all these rivers, they eventually end up in Long Island Sound. Are our rivers considered tidal to some extent, or some parts of the rivers are tidal? I guess I'm not really, I don't know how that analysis works, and I'm assuming it's a term of art for planning, but I don't know what it is.
Well, staff would have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
They just started.
I want,
and so So there in section 4 of chapter 240, we have an elaborated definition of mean high water level for a tidal water body. And if you go to page 5, there's a whole bunch of other definitions: 50-foot buffer, mean high water level, non-tidal water body or water course, a definition for water body, and one for water course. And I don't know that this is a definitional section, so I don't know why these definitions are over here. So I'm confused by the layout of the changes.
Oh, the way I took it, and I didn't really do an in-depth analysis of this, is that some of these other definitions are already in the water, are in the 240, because that's all about wetlands and water. But they're not in the zoning code because the zoning code and the environmental codes were written at different times.
So, but it's kind of pasted at the end of chapter 240-5 before section 6. So it's still in chapter 240. It's not in 342.
It said 342
but look on page 5. There's definitions.
Oh, there's definitions there too.
There
yeah.
and over here. And sometimes the definition says mean high water level, tidal water body, and or
At least
water.
the definitions are consistent in this document.
Well, they're not though, because sometimes, well,
if you're defining water body, it's defined the same way.
that's true.
Right, that's what I meant.
Okay, because in some of them, mean high water level has non-tidal water body or water course, but
And
some
tidal,
of it just tidal
which makes
water
sense.
body.
Right, which makes sense. And I don't know if the Mamaroneck River is tidal. I've never really, because it comes in right by the, by Boston Post Road there, and it's so deep there, I don't know if it's actually affected by the tides.
Okay, but mean high water level for tidal water body, or it should also be or water course. Because if you read the definition of water course, it covers estuaries, bays, harbors, waterways. It doesn't talk about salt water, fresh water. So I mean, I have comments about why wouldn't it be water bodies and water courses?
So a couple of these changes came from Dan Natchez, and it was one of the last meetings before we scheduled the public hearing. Unfortunately, I cannot remember why, because it was months ago, but I know that he had a specific reason that for editing them as such. And so I believe these are his accepted definitions. Although I would like to check one thing very quickly, because I noticed the date on this says version 3, February 25th, 2020. I know there were subsequent changes made, so I want to make sure that you have the right.
I have version 6.
I have version 6.
Oh, the one
Version
online
6.
is version 3.
Oh, that's wrong. We have version 6, 8/26/2020. Is that the latest version?
I'm sorry, which date was it?
8/26.
Yeah, that should be. So I don't know. I might be looking at something different than you then. But I will tell you that I remember those definitions were discussed by Dan and requested by Dan. I just cannot remember the exact basis for why. I'd have to go back and look at the tape.
I think they need a little editing, because, I mean, he may have gotten these in there, but I don't think they're as clear as they could be. And I don't understand the placement of them in this document, because they're shoved in, yeah, you get what I'm saying.
I'd have to look at the placement.
If I may,
When do we have to have these comments to the Board of Trustees?
The public hearing opens next week.
Exactly.
I mean, excuse me, not next week. They're on the same schedule as
So
you.
this is our only meeting where we can discuss this.
October 28th. You should have your recommendations to them beforehand, but I also, I don't know what the process is if you ask them to hold the public hearing open so you can get your comments. I'm not really sure.
I think we can get our comments in, because our comments are questions. It doesn't mean I need an answer to it. It's just,
right, we're just raising issues. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can get, okay, because Cindy, you have most of the comments. I don't know what kind of, oh, I have one question here about permit required, right?
Yeah, I did have a question about, it talks about the zoning board of appeals may grant a permit for the construction alteration.
They don't grant permits.
Do they grant permits? I thought they granted variances.
That's correct. They do grant
Right.
variances. They don't grant permits.
Right.
Right,
So
they
that
can't
takes
grant a
me so
permit for construction, right?
that kind of takes me to. I didn't get a chance to write my comments, but it takes me to the comment that one of the comments that I had. So there's an amendment to section 2 to chapter 240-30, and it's talking about amending everything so that as it relates to the zoning board and what you're talking about, which is granting the permit. But then if you look in the code as it stands right now under chapter 240-30, it says the planning board permit required. So there's ambiguity and discrepancy between the two. And I think that should be addressed as part of your comments to the village board of trustees.
Well, they're taking out.
Yeah, they're taking out the planning board.
All the planning board, all the references to the planning board are, I have a marked up copy, so that's all.
Oh,
That's
I don't
all.
have it.
Whoa, okay. And it's instead, the paragraph got added where the zoning board is now granting the permit. Actually, it said planning board permit, so they're just following the format that was in there before.
Except they put in criteria that the zoning board would have to follow. So,
Right.
so that gets to the bigger picture question. So this is an additional board that an applicant has
Right.
to go to. I think this, even if the zoning board, trying to think about the logical progression of an application through the boards in the village, I would assume they have to go here fairly early to see if they can continue. And then the planning board is going to do site plan, HCCMC is going to do consistency. Just because they get this variance permit, whatever it is, from the zoning board, that doesn't mean the project is a go. There could still be other issues with the project. So this is just to get them started on their way to altering a building that's existing in the 50-foot buffer area. So I don't want to get into a situation where we have dueling boards with dueling jurisdictions and implications that if I got this from the zoning board, I must be able to proceed with the project, because that's not true.
So if I remember correctly, and again, it has been some time, and at that point it was handled more so by Bob than myself, but there was HCZM felt that they should have the purview, planning felt they should have the purview, and ZBA. And I remember there was also a debate over permit versus variance. And so this is the result of what the Board of Trustees felt was the best route. Obviously, you're welcome to make your comments. I'm just letting you know that that's the background.
I'm not arguing to get the jurisdiction over
Right.
this permit variance, whatever this thing is. I'm just saying that it has to be clear to applicants that if they get this,
I see. Okay.
that
And
doesn't
it
mean
also, right.
the project can move forward without all of the other.
I see.
It doesn't change the jurisdiction of HCCMC or planning board in other matters.
I haven't been consistently involved in village matters for the past 20 years, but I've been in and out for 20 years. And whenever I was involved, the concept of streamlining the process for the applicants was always paramount. That we always were trying to streamline the process. So this adds another step, which
That's
is not
another-
streamlined.
We can have another step. It adds another board.
It adds another board, which would, right, and it adds to me, it adds a complication.
Right.
Now, the Board of Trustees can do what they want, but I'm always for trying to streamline things and make things not onerous for the applicants. It doesn't mean to say I'm on their side and I want to see them succeed. I want to do what's best for the village, and having a process. I guess it's the efficiency expert in me. I want everything streamlined, even my life. So, I was just surprised to see the zoning board involved in this, because they have to come to us anyway, and they have to go to HCZM anyway.
And we have to look at all these things that
Right.
they're having another set of eyes look at, which maybe
Right.
there's a reason for that, but I don't
Right.
fully get it. So we can point that out.
So we have some comments. Richard, do you have any additional comments?
I go back to my original position that this is really a planning board matter. You don't need to involve zoning board. And I don't know if it's worth or politic to restate that, but it's clear this just clogs it up.
Well, I could see this be an HCZMC review as well.
Right, it could be either one.
Right. It's planned because we all look at the same general stuff here. It actually maybe is more HCZMC.
So maybe it won't look like we're trying to retain power, or if somebody thinks that's what we're trying to do, which we're really not. Maybe we recommend that it all go to HCZMC. Because, if they come to us, it usually needs a site plan or wetlands permit or whatnot. They can come to us, opening application, go off to HCZM and come back.
Well, you know what? I mean, we've been trying for years to transfer wetlands permits to HCZMC.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe the village board would consider getting that done. And then, there could be a situation where it doesn't come to planning at all.
That would really streamline things. Right.
Well, it makes more sense. And then we don't have escrow questions, and we don't. It just makes everything easier.
Okay, how are we going to proceed on this?
I can write up my questions. William, I guess the planning department would need to look into the tidal water body versus non-tidal water body. There must be a way to, because I'm not sure anybody at the village board looked at this. I mean, maybe they did, and maybe Trustee Natchez understands this intuitively, but the rest of us don't.
That was the impression I got.
It was what?
I said that was the impression I got.
Okay, yeah.
Intuitive understanding.
Right, but I'd like to understand. So maybe we just bunch a bunch of bullet points together and send them something, and they get it and they do with it what they will, because they will anyway.
Fair enough. I have two other quick things just for the board. You mentioned about the zoning board granting a permit. I just thought about it. It's a permit, but the permit is really a special use permit. That's the only thing the zoning board can grant. It's either variance, use variance, area variance, use variance, or special use permit. So
this should be changed to special use permit, or that's a recommendation.
It either should be that, it should either
or a variance. It should be a variance. It's not a special use permit. Special use permits have to come up for review to make sure the use hasn't changed. If somebody's building a building in the buffer zone, that's going to be built.
Right.
Well, the other option is somebody should be coming again, this goes back to jurisdiction, as opposed to it going to the zoning board. Again, is it a planning board situation where the planning board is granting a waiver? Or some other board granting a waiver as opposed to a variance?
Waiver makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's really what it is. It's a waiver.
Did you pick up the two typos on the first page?
On the first page? No.
Yes.
Oh, no, I missed those. Tell me.
E and F.
I didn't look at the pretty language at the beginning. I don't care.
E and F in the middle of the page. It'll jump right off at you.
And the only other...
is missing an A. Go ahead, William. I'm sorry.
The only other comment that I have about the definitions and making sure that the definitions match, you think, I don't know how you would address this, but I guess the way I was thinking is, if you're gonna have definitions in this section of code, which is chapter 240, the same definitions should be transferred and I guess restated in other sections like 342 and whatever other sections are applicable, so that as you move through the code, the village code in its entirety, all of the definitions match.
Gee, what a novel idea.
That's our bugaboo, certainly. But I don't want to have definitions that aren't referred to in the code section. So to just transfer these without them actually being used in the code section, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, just muddy. It muddies up the code, which is already muddy.
I agree that you're right. It should be the same definitions.
Right.
And
if they're applicable. Right.
If it's applicable.
Right.
And when they're changing mean high water level, tidal water body, I don't know where else in the code that appears, but we should probably check.
Right. Okay.
Well, not us, the village board.
Right. It can be a comment just to make sure. Right.
Yep.
All right. So we're funneling our comments to Ms. Goldstein.
Well, I'm going to work with William on this.
Okay.
Right.
I'll look at it again.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We'll
for
split
stepping up.
We'll split this up and get it done. And we'll circulate it to everybody before
Yes.
it gets sent to the board of
Yeah.
trustees?
Yeah, like we did the tree memo, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, is there anything else anybody wants to say tonight? It's been fun.
As always.
I know, just us kids. It's 9/11, a auspicious number. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank you
night.
very
Good
much
night.
for your hard work before and during this meeting. It was one of those meetings, but you know what? We got through it and it's all good. All right. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. Good night.
Right.